spent a lot of time talking about the economic side of the coronavirus crisis and what we've seen, government policies in the aftermath of this pandemic starting to really spread. We've got shutdowns across the country and small business owners that have been deeply, deeply struggling to get by here, particularly because they're not able. Many are not able to do business because they've been told you can't do it. So the federal government has been trying to provide some support. We've seen stimulus programs of various sorts that have been put into effect, including the Paycheck Protection Program, which was providing loans that could be forgiven, depending on the use of the loan money, for example, for payroll, to small businesses, although we have seen a lot of larger companies that have also been beneficiaries of this PPP. So, what about the Paycheck Protection Program? How has it worked out? How are small businesses doing? What are we to make of it all? Let's talk with our friends at Job Creators Network. This time, Board Chair Heidi Ganahl joins us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads to dive in a little bit. Heidi, welcome to Jimmy at the Crossroads. So great to have you.
Hi, Jimmy. It's great to be on.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. So, when it comes to small businesses, I mean, we're going through a very difficult time for small businesses. Job Creators Network has a network of small business members across the country. What are you hearing from small businesses about the struggles, trials, and tribulations they're going through?
Well, it's an incredibly challenging time, as we all know. I think the biggest issue is how do we keep employees on staff without revenue or very little revenue? How do we pay the rent? How do we pay utilities? The expenses, on the expense side, it's very overwhelming, and they're not getting a lot of relief from landlords, unfortunately, or, utility companies, or, trying to keep employees engaged and working or paid during this time is really the key motive behind most of the entrepreneurs that I'm talking to right now. So caring for our employees, making sure that they're still getting a paycheck, and keeping the business going and alive while we're facing this very tenuous situation.
Now, you have been recognized for building a multi-million-dollar company, Can't Bow Wow. So you have a heck of a lot of experience with entrepreneurship, growing a small business into a company that has different franchise locations across the state and around and just all over the place. What from that experience, and then, of course, talking with other entrepreneurs around the country, do you think really helps you to understand what it's like to go through these very challenging times? Because I'm hearing, and we'll play a clip in a bit, but I'm hearing a lot of people on the media who seem to be dismissive of small business owners saying, oh, they're not struggling economically. They're small business owners, therefore they can get by here. But you know from experience that there are deep, deep challenges, especially in a crisis like this, but even in general already that small business owners face.
I mean, honestly, Jimmy, you and I both know that small businesses are the engine of this economy, and we are the job creators. We're the ones providing a livelihood for most Americans. And so it's imperative that we pay attention and honor the role that job creators play in our society. I just saw a frightening statistic this morning that, let's see, I don't want to mess this up. Moody's Analytics estimates that in only a few weeks' time, stay-at-home orders have reduced U.S. economic output by 29%. That's almost 30% of our economic output is come to a screeching halt. The median small business holding is 27 days worth of cash reserve. So we're already in this, 5 or 6 weeks? So the cash is gone. The PPP program is helpful, but more loans is not the answer. We've got to figure out a way to reopen our economy and support these small businesses in providing their products and services so that they can keep people employed.
Yeah, I think that's true. I want to play a clip here. This is a snippet from a guy named David Zirin on MSNBC. He's a sports editor for The Nation and a sports podcast host for that. Who knew that The Nation left-wing outlet had a sports podcast, but apparently they do. I think you should stick to sports, but I want to play a clip particularly focusing on the way in which he talks about small business owners here. This is from, I think, Sunday.
They've gone from all lives matter to no lives matter. These folks are, let's be honest about what they are. They are the Fox News, Nazi Confederate, death cult rump of the Republican Party. And their very existence is a slap in the face, not only to the healthcare workers on the front lines risking their lives every single day, but it's also a slap into the face to the people who are actually dying from this virus in disproportionate numbers, black and brown people. These aren't economically disenfranchised folks. These are small business owners. These are retirees. These are people who want their workers to be sent back to work, not themselves. It's a complete and utter farce. It's an AstroTurf farce.
You are welcome, Heidi Ganahl, to talk about Fox News, Nazi Confederate death cult if you want to, but it was the last part about small businesses that I think I particularly want your thoughts on.
Oh my goodness, that's frightening. What I know about small business owners are they care deeply about their employees.
Yes.
They're like family. And as I built Camp Bow Wow and now as I'm building SheFactor, I mean, my team it means the world to me. I would never put them in danger. And I want the best for them. And what I'm hearing on the front lines is people want to get back to work. They want to figure out how to navigate honoring the health and safety of their employees and their customers, but also provide their products and services so that they can keep the economy going, keep people employed, and keep food on the table for their employees as well.
He says these aren't economically disadvantaged folks. These are small business owners. And I'm thinking, okay, I mean, this company is a new company for me as well. So I'm a small business owner. And I'm looking at it. I've got investors in my company. I need to make sure I have a return on investment. Every company that starts and utilizes, puts to use investor capital, those investors are taking a chance on that new small business and expecting a return on that investment, let alone all the other aspects to being able to provide for your employees, to make payroll, to go ahead and provide for your own family and to keep your business alive. It just, I think, shows an absolute level of ignorance that is truly dismaying if you think about it.
I absolutely agree, Jimmy. And like I said before, I think that small businesses are the engine of the economy. And if we don't keep small business owners supported and help them keep people employed, the government only has so much money. And I think we've already run out, honestly, a long time ago. But we've got to figure out how to navigate this without destroying our economy and destroying the livelihood of small businesses, because that destroys the livelihood of their employees. Mm-hmm. And it just goes downstream.
Right. Again, we're talking with Heidi Ganahl, who is board chair for the Job Creators Network. Let's specifically talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, which looks like it may get an infusion. It passed the House, or rather the Senate on Tuesday, and expected to happen tomorrow would be the passage by the House of Representatives of $484 billion in additional funding. That's $500 billion on top of what was already given out. How crucial do you think, at least given the shutdowns that are in place, this Paycheck Protection Program is? And then what also do you make of the fact that a lot of the money, billions of dollars it looks like, has been given out to larger companies and not just small businesses?
Well, I think the PPP program is a great idea. It's desperately needed, especially because of the grant component, because the last thing we want is for small business owners who are already stretched extremely thin to come out of this with a bunch more debt and the responsibility to pay a lot of money back after they get through this. I just don't think that's going to be helpful. I tell people, vote with your dollar. And if companies that are taking the money shouldn't be, then I think you're seeing what happened with Steak and Shake and some other companies. It'll catch up with them. So I think this needs to get into the hands of the most critical folks on the front lines. Employers that have a few employees, maybe upwards of, I think it's 500 employees, is what this is targeted for. I did see some stats yesterday that 74% of the PPP loans are for $150,000 or less. So the majority of the money is getting in the hands of small business owners, and I mean small, not the big corporations. And again, I think that consumers will be the judges about who took the money that shouldn't have taken the money, and companies need to be careful about doing that if they are taking it and they don't need it.
Again, Heidi Ganahl, our guest, I think that's true. Every one of us needs to make sure that we hold accountable companies that are getting this money that should not be, but also those who are executing the program, carrying it out. One of the challenges when you've got hundreds upon hundreds of billions of dollars that you are doling out in loans or whatever else, subsidies, what have you, depending on the nature of the program, is that you can have waste, you can have abuse that's going, especially when you're trying to roll something out very, very quickly. And the Small Business Administration is doing their level best to really roll this program out in partnership with banks and so forth. And so the challenges of running a big government leviathan in the midst of a crisis are especially acute when we already know that any government program can be very difficult to facilitate. But there are a lot of folks who are saying, hey, there are programs like this that may be necessary, but, and you mentioned this before, Heidi Ganahl, the idea that we can just expect the government to provide for small businesses as well as individuals for weeks or months on end is just not tenable. So this is good as a backstop in the short term, but at some point soon, things have got to start opening up more.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to incentives. I think the government can play a role in creating powerful incentives to make it easy for people who have been infected or are at risk to stay home, protect themselves, and allow employers to support them in doing so. So I think there's been some very innovative discussion around how to tackle this. Kristi Noem and Greg Abbott and some other governors have come up with some great ideas on how to navigate their way forward with honoring the economy, the economic situation we're in, as well as the healthcare situation. I mean, this is unprecedented. So we've got to work through this together. And I don't think it's a black or white issue, an either or issue. It's a both and either or. We're all in this together, and we've got to figure out how to address both the economy and our health.
What do you say to those Americans? And I was so glad you put out the fact or the stat that you saw about 74% of the Paycheck Protection Program loans, Heidi, are going to the genuinely small businesses that need them. But there are a lot of Americans who may look at this program and say, hey, this is a profligate opportunity for a lot of bigger businesses, and I don't like this structure. And maybe they're from the left, maybe they're from the right. They're more averse to this program, maybe even pushing back and telling politicians, hey, you shouldn't pass this in the House of Representatives. What do you say to them?
I would say vote with your dollar, hold those companies accountable and, make this a PR play instead of a denial of more money or funding for the people who really need it. Not a large percentage of small businesses are getting this PPP money. So it's a very small percent of companies that have this opportunity. And I think that there are lots of other ways we can help small businesses going forward, mostly by investing in them. Buy takeout and delivery from your local restaurants, buy a gift card from a company that is struggling. I think, if landlords and mortgage owners can help on the rent relief, that would be, wonderful. But I know they have bills to pay too. So again, I think we're all in this together, and we've got to be really out of the box as far as our thinking and how to tackle some of these problems. But that's the beauty of entrepreneurship and small business owners, is that's why they're in business. They're big thinkers, they're innovators. They know how to address difficulties in their business and with their customers and their employees. So let's continue to look at getting rid of unnecessary regulation and opening the floodgates to innovation and new ways of thinking about doing business and protecting our employees and our customers. And a lot of trial and error and taking some risks, but I think it's warranted right now.
Yeah, one of the great lessons, at least, that we can take away from this, and politicians around the country have been learning this lesson, at least in the middle of a crisis, whether they agree with it being permanent or not, may be a different story, but the idea of cutting the red tape, getting out of the way of the private sector so they can innovate, so they can address these issues, so they're not burdened by unnecessary costs from unnecessary burdensome regulation. I think that dovetails very specifically and nicely with what you were just saying. Heidi Ganahl, again, board chair at Job Creators Network. Just a few more minutes with you, and I want to put on two other hats that you've got for just a moment, if I can, because first of all, you mentioned SheFactor, which is a new small business that you launched, I think last year. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that and what the dynamic is like at this point in time for you and your new business.
Well, it's interesting. We started as a digital and live platform for young women that are just launching their lives after college. And it's really to help them get out there and create a life that they love and find their passion and their sweet spot and surround themselves with great people to help them do so. We launched last May. We've reached almost 1 million young women over the last year. But we had just launched a live event series that we were going to be hosting over the next 6 months right before this all happened. So we had to quickly pivot with our small team to doing everything virtually. And we've had a lot of success. We have a huge party tonight online, our virtual squad meeting for the month. And we're going to host a virtual graduation party for 2020 graduates, young women that are just graduating from college. We're hoping to have 10,000 young women from around the country on that virtual event on May 28th. So a lot of shifting, a lot of innovating, a lot of finding resourcefulness and really staying disciplined around who our customers are and how we can best serve them.
So look, 2008, I entered college at Regis University, and you remember what was going on in 2008. When I graduated in 2011, I was lucky to find a job shortly out of college, but I was wondering, how the heck am I going to find work? Well, now you have graduates who are literally graduating into an economy where, as you said, 29% of the economy is essentially shut down, at least at this point in time. What advice are you giving to young women who are just graduating college and going out into the working world, A, how to deal with and manage through right now in the very short term, and then B, once things do get opened up again, how to go about finding that job and getting your footing post-college?
Well, I think we have two different choices right now. We can kind of live in the pessimism and the fear and the anxiety about what's happening, or we can look at the opportunity and find ways to identify our talents and our resourcefulness and offer that as a value proposition to entrepreneurs and small business owners and large corporations. Figure out, what's your sweet spot? What are you really talented at? And get out there and network online and ask for connections and make sure that you're, still using this time, if you can't find a job yet, to connect, meet people virtually. I mean, you may just be able to get the CEO of the company that you want to work for online for 10 minutes to talk about your future and start building those connections and relationships. So it's all about connections right now and cultivating relationships, and you've got to stay the course and you'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my experience professionally has been one of, it is in who you know and how you cultivate those relationships. And it's certainly different when you have to be socially distanced in forming those relationships from being able to have a face-to-face meeting. And finally, Heidi Ganahl, our guest again, board chair at Job Creators Network, founder of SheFactor. And also, you are a member of the Board of Regents for the University of Colorado system. In fact, you are one of two at-large posts of the Board of Regents in Colorado is elected. How is the University of Colorado weathering this storm? Because there's a lot of things that have been changing as a result of coronavirus now. And then you're also surely looking at what is life going to be like for students once we get to the fall. Will students be returning in the class, looking at online prospects, those kinds of things? Just walk us through a little bit what a major university is going through right now.
Oh my goodness, it's a grand experiment. I think we were already on track to completely turn higher ed on its head and innovate and find new ways to work with students and create the workforce of the future. Well, that's been accelerated tremendously. I mean, to the point where we are meeting constantly. We're talking about how to solve the students' problems, how to solve the faculty's problems, how to solve the problem of funding because the state government budgets are getting drastically slashed. And of course, we're worried about admissions next fall and if students are going to be willing to sign on, not knowing if it's going to be virtual or live. At University of Colorado, we have already taken about a $350 million hit on our budget with refunds and all the things that are going on there. If we don't come back in the fall, it could be upwards of $850 million. So I think ingenuity, entrepreneurship, resourcefulness, and discipline, the engines of American success, will be just as important in higher education and figuring out how to navigate this time and educate our students and provide value in ways that we've never thought of before. But my goodness, we have some of the most amazing, talented researchers and faculty members at the University of Colorado. I mean, they have solutions. We just need to open the floodgates and let them try things, take risks, and do things differently than the traditional way we've educated in the past.
Innovation really is the key in addressing all sorts of crisis situations, no matter what kind of institution you are, to be sure. Heidi Ganahl, I know that I kept you on longer, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts in all these hats that you wear. I appreciate it very much, and I hope you and your family stay well and healthy.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Once again, Heidi Ganahl joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, board chair for the Job Creators Network, founder of SheFactor, and a University of Colorado Regent at large. You just watched a clip from Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel today. You want to catch our live show, and I love your support.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense.